Hello. What's up? It's Monday morning. Basically, we got three things to talk about. I think I'm just gonna make a shorter video. I got a French lesson coming up in about 40 minutes. So let's try to make a 30-minute video. Let's do 10-minute, 10-minute, 10 minutes. So the first 10-minute thing I wanted to talk about, well, I guess it's this idea that we need to start creating a habit around um, around there's these five areas the of my app from Tom's work, and like it doesn't really make sense that I'm trying to tell other people to do this if I'm not doing it myself. So I have to show that I'm doing it and I'm getting benefit from it. Friday brains. So the thing is competitive analysis. Wait, what? Hold on, let me just share this screen. I think maybe it'll make more sense if I share the screen. Okay, here we are. All right, so last week I said, all right, so today's Friday and I want to start a new habit, which is basically every time I start a new video, wait, I just could just change this to reasoning. There we go. So I just wanted to change it now. We're on 2.5 Pro reasoning because I just want it to be like more smarter about this. So, all right. So, I have this concept that it's came from the book called Create Crucial Insight by Thomas Buckwoltz. And there's a concept called inventiveness. So it's his inventiveness. It's basically some ideas that can help people to be more inventive. And it means that to be inventive, what? Obviously, it means to go from 0 to 1 or from one to many, and basically has 9 eyes, the letter I. In his methodology, he talks of these things. Okay, so I don't know what the heck's going on because I think that Friday, why would you talk about? Hold on, I actually need to check to see if you can actually see this when I share this window. Yeah, you can tell it's Monday because I'm just kind of chilling out. And good, you can see it. Perfect. Anyways, today's actually Monday, so let's just go to the website. This is Project Arrowhead website, and yeah. So today is imitate and trends. So I'm just gonna pull the Gemini window out so that I can see it on the side of the screen. That way, what I could do is I can click the button over on the Gemini screen, and then I can talk to it. Hello, Gemini. Okay, here we go. So today's Monday, and like, I don't know what I was talking about last time I made a post here on this chat window because Friday should be the last of the five brainstorming questions. And today we are on the first of the brainstorming questions. So let me just tell you a couple of things. I want to talk about um, the questions that I have, like the original questions that I have in my in my product designs. Then I'm going to tell you how those questions have changed a little bit inside of the application. And then we can just have a chat and we can talk about my product and we can figure out like how to think about it a little bit better. So, all right. So basically in my original product design, I had this first idea that comes from Tom's book. And in Tom's book, he's talking about the 5 eyes of inventiveness. So I didn't take all of those eyes. I just because he has like 9 eyes. and I only wanted 5 of them for what I think that people should focus on. Why? Because, well, I guess we could talk about his 9 eyes. The very top one is called imitate. The theme is called reuse. And so, for example, when we talk about any kind of endeavor or plan or project, there's some activities that we might want to reuse. And so reuse, or that means to imitate the way that things were done in the past. And I don't think it matters if you're doing it yourself or if it was somebody else that did that. So if you follow some type of behavioral pattern, then there is a tendency that you'll get some type of result. And if you have the same resources, you have the same technology, you have the same methodology, you have the same behavior, I mean, there's a high probability that you could get the same result, particularly if you compare it to random behavior. Obviously, there are ways to get similar results using different behavioral patterns, but that's not what we want to focus on today. Today, we just want to focus on things like best practices and successes that other people have achieved. And so, whenever we define some kind of endeavor, then we need to figure out how other people have done it in the past, and then figure out what we can learn from those experiences. Another way to talk about this is called benchmarking. So we can say that an endeavor needs an activity. We can say that an entity does a certain type of activity. We can define the entity and then define the entity. We can define the endeavor and then define the entity. And then also, in addition to entities, we can talk about the mindset. So, for example, one behavior or mindset could be this theme of reuses, this typical behavior of imitate, which basically means to implement and integrate parallel or competitive innovations. That's what Tom's written in his book. He specifically said it means to implement and integrate parallel or competitive innovations. In my design, basically, I said, how are they doing it? They meaning any entity. It could be you, somebody else. And then have you figured out best practices, talked to industry experts, and followed the trends so that you can keep up with what's going on, provide examples? And then in the website, it just basically says how are competitors, industry leaders, or even other successful entities in different fields doing it? What trends are emerging that could be relevant? Think about what competitors, industry leaders, trends, and successful approaches from other fields that could be relevant in your situation. Consider looking beyond your immediate industry for inspiration. Okay, so it's Monday, and those are the things that we're thinking about. And the idea now, the things that we are thinking about, then potentially, well, you would need to have a better understanding of the project that I'm working on. And then by having a better understanding of my project, then you would be able to help me to do research and conduct a conversation around this specific topic. So I don't know, how do you suggest we start? I have 5 calibration documents. One calibration document is called the products requirement document. It goes through my whole project and like the product that I'm designing right now. Another one is called the system logic and architecture document, and then another one is called operational manual and decisions log. And yeah, so then I have a couple of other documents. For example, one that would help a architect to understand how I'm using the AI software development tools in order to build the project. Yeah, so I could go through any of that. I could talk to you in general about what the work I've done so far. I could tell you about the how far we are along in the project. I could tell you about what the project is supposed to do in general. I could tell you about all of these thoughts, and then you could help me to conduct a conversation so that we could use this principle of reuse and imitate in order to understand what's happening in the world regarding this business endeavor and other teams and projects around this concept, and then think about like what can we draw from those experiences, as well as those certain types of behavioral patterns that are used in other organizations that we might consider when moving forward, so that we can get more progress, better progress out of our current processes. Okay, so here we go. All right, so that's the first 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes was just having this little habit where we are using our own tools to think about how to move forward. Let's just click on the audio and see what this guy has to say. All right, so for some reason, let me just reshare this window so we can get the audio going. All right, just give her a second try.
We begin with the first principle. I understand today's focus is on reuse and the corresponding activity, imitate. The core question we're exploring is, how are competitors, industry leaders, or even other successful entities in different fields doing it? What trends are emerging that could be relevant? You've correctly identified that for me to help you benchmark, find best practices, and analyze trends, I first need to understand your project. You have the map, and I need you to show me where we are before we can explore the surrounding territory. You suggested several documents you could share, which is incredibly helpful. Of those, the Product Requirements Document, PRD, sounds like the perfect starting point. It contains the what, who, and why of your endeavor, which is the essential foundation for any competitive or parallel analysis. Here is my suggested plan for how we can start. Let's begin with a high-level overview of your project, as if you were explaining it to a new team member. You don't need to share the entire document at once. We can have a conversation to establish the basics. To guide our initial conversation, let's focus on these 4 key areas from your project. 1. The core problem. What specific problem or unmet need are you trying to solve in the world? 2. The target audience. Who experiences this problem most acutely? Who is your ideal customer or user? 3. The solution. In simple terms, what is your product or endeavor? What does it do? 4. The unique value proposition. How does your solution solve the problem in a better, different, or more effective way than existing alternatives? Once I have this foundational understanding, I can then help you more effectively research and brainstorm answers to today's core question. We can start identifying direct competitors, looking at how industry leaders operate, and even draw inspiration from successful patterns in completely different fields. So, whenever you're ready, please tell me about your project, perhaps by addressing those 4 points. We'll use that as our launchpad for today's Imitate and Reuse session.
All right, so yeah, I'll just spend a little bit of time here explaining these things. I don't necessarily want to go deeper into the conversation today, but at least I want to upload this information so that you have it. Because tomorrow we're going to go on to the second question, and maybe the second question would be, it would be more useful for you when we move to our second question if you had an idea of the first question, particularly if I shared with you the information that you're now requiring. So let's talk about the core problem. What specific problem or unmet need are you trying to solve in the world? Basically, the fundamental problem is when you have managers, and the manager has to communicate with 2 groups of people. The manager needs to communicate with the senior management in order to create a vision and to define objectives. And then once the objectives are defined, then they need to communicate with their staff. So, for example, a while ago, I created this little homework assignment, and basically it's like it was called, quote, "Boss, give me a raise," quote. And the fundamental question was, when you go to your boss and you ask for a raise, then the question is like, okay, so what should this conversation actually be about? My suggestion was that if you want to get a boss, if you want to get a raise from your boss, then the fundamental question should be, like, in the next period of time, in the next 3 months, in the next 90 days, in the next 6 months, what are the three objectives, the three things that you are going to deliver? And then if you are able to define three things that you will be able to deliver in the next 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or the next year. So you pick a time period, you explain what you're going to deliver in that time period. And also you define the value that those things are going to have for the organization. And then if the boss says, yeah, I agree that those things have some real value, and that if you can deliver those things within that certain time period, then I agree that some of the compensation structures that are enforcing should be changed. And it goes right back to the idea of the job of the manager is to define objectives. So the five questions that come from the brainstorming module are going to help a manager to be able to either have a conversation with their senior managers, or just to engage in the thought process of trying to figure out what to do. And so I just shared with you the first of these five questions. And in the next week, we're going to go through all five questions. So at the end of the week, you're going to have a very clear understanding of the value and the purpose and what it does when a manager is able to think about and master these five questions. And also, as they're able to go through these questions week after week after week, and to use them when they are having experiences with the senior management. Because when the manager and the senior management can identify very specific areas where we should be working and where there is value, and there's a huge amount of progress and the organizations that people will have. And well, I'm just going to use AI. I'm going to ask AI what to do. And AI, of course, it's like a wonderful system of knowledge and learning, but you still have to give some direction. You still have to think about how to best solve the problem. And at the end of the day, you have to make your own decisions. So now, once you brainstormed, you go through the brainstorming module, and then the next module is called the choose module. In the choose module, there's another five questions, and these five questions, they're going to help you to think about the scenarios. So maybe you had more than one objective that you thought was worth pursuing, and then it helps you to think about the objective, and then to to find the governing principle behind how the decision should be made, and then how much weight should we put on the different elements which are related to making the decision. Those two modules, they make up between the manager and the senior management in order to create objectives, to make decisions about objectives. And then the manager is going to take those objectives, go down into the factory floor or into the office, wherever their team is located, and they're going to go through another module. It's called the objectives module. The objectives module is really a way for the team and the manager to get on the same page. And through talking about 7 questions, they're able to create a very robust task list. So you can see that, generally speaking, there's a lot of organizations that have project management software. So the market that I'm looking for is managers who are already using project management software, and they need a process to help them to make decisions about objectives, and then how to communicate those objectives to their staff when they're making these task lists within their project management software. Now, of course, I have some ideas about how to actually get people to the website. And then I have some ideas about, there's basically 3 tiers. There's a free tier, there's a pro tier, and there's a team tier. So there's some additional features that are added when people are paying. For example, the app that I just explained to you right now is the core features of the free version. And then after you've gone through the brainstorming module and the choose module in order to decided on an objective. Then you go through the objectives module in order to create the task list. And then also in the free version, there's actually a task list on the last page. You can enter tasks into the task list, and you can also download the task list, and then you can put the task list into your project management software. But the task list is also robust enough for people who don't currently have task list software, project management software, so they could use it for their personal use. And all of the data is saved in their own browser, so they don't need to sign up. Now, after time, there's a certain amount of people, they might believe that, oh, okay, there's a lot of value in this thinking process. But the thing is that I have one project or I have more than one project, and I want to be able to save information like separately between projects. And so that's where the paid pro version comes in, where a person could then create the modules. They could save the content from the questions in those modules within projects. They could access different projects. And then also there would be a couple of additional modules. For example, there's one module called Touchbase. Touchbase is basically when you go and talk to one of your staff members and you identify one of the tasks that they're working on, helps you to follow up with them asking like, hey, what task are you working on? What are you going to be working on today specifically? And then are there any blockers? What are some problems or issues you're having? And then what are some sources of help and assistance? How can we remove that blocker? Then we go back to the task list to see if we can update the task list in any way or if we should make some changes. So there's that little loop right there between the task list and the touch base. And the manager in the pro version would be able to keep track of those daily touch base activities or weekly or whatever the time period is, so that that manager knows exactly which task that their staff is on, and they would be able to save different touch base with all their different team members. They could open up that project, they can open up that objective, they can open up that touch base and see exactly where their team members are. And they would also have a history of the issues and blockers and problems that people have had and overcome over time until they accomplish the objective. Then, of course, once the objective is complete, then you're in the next loop, which is, is the project done? If the project is not done yet, then we need to create a new objective, which would then create a new task list, and then you'd be doing the touch-based task list loop again. So, yeah. So now the only problem is, well, if we're not done the project, but we need to do like another objective, then of course there's the brainstorming choose loop that would help you to create the new objective. All right, so you can see that there's a couple of different loops in there. That's all in the pro version. Then in the team version, then you would actually have different people that have access to the same data, meaning that when I open up the touch base, then my team member could also open up that same touch base. They could enter the information directly into the app, even if we're not having a direct meeting, or if we're having a meeting over Zoom, we could both have the touch base module open, and the person on my staff could enter the data in themselves. Or if we're having, like, for example, if we're having a team meeting to discuss an objective, we can have everybody have the same screen open, and then different people could enter data into there. Or, for example, people could add their tasks to the task list from different locations. Now, so you can see that this is basically the different versions of the application. And I think that you could understand based on this idea of like that. Okay. All right. So I didn't quite get into. Um, yeah, I guess I talked about all that, but just like in my own way. All right. So the second thing I wanted to talk about today was about Replit. Replit. And we're going to have to shorten that conversation down. Well,
Thank you for that comprehensive overview. I have a much clearer picture of your project now. I've saved all this information, and we'll be ready to dive into the second brainstorming question tomorrow. Based on your explanation, I understand that you're creating a strategic and communication framework for managers. Your application sits before and alongside traditional project management software, helping managers answer the crucial questions of what should we do and why, before they get to the how of a task list. Applying today's imitate and reuse theme. Since today's theme is all about learning from what others are doing, let's use this new context to frame our first brainstorming session. The core question is, how are other companies solving this problem of bridging the gap between high-level objectives and daily tasks? Here are a few areas we could investigate to benchmark your idea. 1. Existing project management giants. The first place to look is at the market leaders your target audience already uses. How do tools like Asana, linked to Monday.com, and Rech handle goal setting? Many have introduced features for high-level goals or OKRs, objectives and key results. We should look at how these features are integrated. Are they core to the experience or a bolted-on feature? How intuitive are they? What templates do they offer? Most platforms provide templates for strategic planning, product roadmaps, etc. Analyzing these can reveal common patterns and assumptions about how managers think. 2. Specialized OKR and strategy software. There is a whole category of software dedicated only to setting and tracking objectives. Who are the leaders in the OKR software space? Companies like Lattice, linked to Profit.co, and Teamflect focus specifically on this strategic layer. What is their core value proposition? They often emphasize alignment, transparency, and creating a single source of truth for company goals. How do they message this, and what specific pain points do they address? 3. Pricing and monetization models. Your tiered model, free, pro, team, is a classic SaaS approach. We can refine it by looking at what competitors do. What are the common pricing models? Most use a mix of per user, per month fees and tiered features. The free tier from paid tiers. For tools like Trello or Notion, collaboration and advanced permissions are key paid features. For your app, ability to save multiple projects and the Touchbase module are your core paid differentiate. We can compare this to what others consider premium. By imitating, or, more accurately, learning from the successes and failures of these other products, we can better position your app and refine its features. I've initiated some research based on these points. For our next session, we can build on this foundation as we move to your second brainstorming question.
Yeah, so in addition to those ideas, those are things that I've looked at before. Particularly, I liked this idea that you mentioned of like how do these other tools handle making objectives. Now, particularly this idea of like creating objectives. So you said that there's templates. Yeah, it's true that there's different planning templates inside of these project management apps. And then there's also the OKR specific software. For example, I've seen Profit.co, and it is a very specific piece of software that forces you to use the OKR methodology. And the thing is that it doesn't actually help you to understand what your objective should be, but it helps you after you've defined your objective, it helps you to think about what are the sub objectives, or like what are the tasks that you need to complete in order to complete the objective. So the primary feature of the brainstorming module is to actually have like a very specific idea of like what the objectives should be. And Profit.co, it does not give you any information about what those objectives should be. It simply gives you the OKR methodology, and then you are going to fill in the empty boxes with your own ideas. Now, if we go into the idea of Asana, Monday.com, and Rech, so I like the idea you mentioned with these templates. Now, a template does give you a lot of help, because when, for example, if you're trying to roll out a product, then you're going to have it would be helpful if you had a product roadmap template. The product roadmap template gives you a clue into the general path that you need to go through when you're rolling out a project or a product, but it doesn't give you the fine details of like within the template, and within step one, then what is the objective that we need to have? And then, well, maybe it does give you a hint about what that objective is supposed to be. But when you actually do a product roadmap, and when you actually are on step number one, you have to go into finer and finer details, and those details are not provided by the template. You have to go in and you have to make decisions. And so the 5 questions in the brainstorming module are the actual questions that will shape the conversation that you have to go through, regardless of which software you're using, in order to actually record the answers, or to make the, or like once you've made a decision, then you can use Asana to write down the objective. You can use profit.co to write down the objective. You can write down the tasks. You can write down the, all the deliverables. You can write down what needs to be done. You can do all those things. But the main key, the main value proposition of this thinking methodology are these 5 original questions that come from the State Inventiveness Checklist from the book Create Crucial Insight by Thomas Buckwoltz. And, there's a lot of different thinking methodologies out there. We have SWOT analysis, and you have Porter's 5 forces, and you have a couple of different other famous methodologies. But or you just have the simple concept of writing pros and cons. So you have, like, on the one side of the page, you can talk about what are the things that are pushing us towards making some kind of decision. On the other side, you could talk about the things which are trying to stop you, or which may be negative points, pros and cons, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to set up the decision-making process. And so I think that these 5 questions in the brainstorming module are actually the key 5 questions that every company needs to be continually revisit in order to make sure that their project is heading in the right direction, both right now for the objectives we're now pursuing, and as we move forward in time, if we want to make some adjustments to our current objectives, and also in the future when we have to make the next step of objectives. I think that these 5 questions are the core starting point to any company's work as they move forward. And that's why I'm starting this chat, is because over time we're going to continually use these 5 questions in order to make better decisions moving forward. All right, so I mean, the only thing I wanted to say about Replit was that they just came out with their agent too. And every time I watch these videos and I look at these AI software development tools, they're only ever talking about like one prompting. We just use one prompt and it makes the whole application, and then there's no problems, and it's awesome and everything's great. Yeah, okay. But the thing is that when you want to make some significant upgrades to that piece of software, the question is, like, how well does the AI understand your app and all of the different features, and how does it understand the language, and how does it understand the program? So right now, I don't see any good agents that are like able to actually understand what has already been created in order to make some adjustments. The third thing I wanted to do was I just wanted to jump right back into our regular, we're going to keep developing our app. So I think I'm going to have to wait on that. I think I'm going to make a second video today. And then in the second video, we're going to actually go into the task.
That's a crucial distinction, and thank you for clarifying it. It sharpens the focus of our entire conversation. If I'm understanding you correctly, the core value of your product is not in being a better place to store objectives and tasks, like an Asana or link to profit.co, but in being a system to discover, formulate, and validate the right objectives in the first place. The real product is the thinking methodology itself.
Yeah.
The software is the vehicle for delivering that methodology in a structured, repeatable way.
Exactly.
This reframes our imitate and reuse task completely. Instead of just looking at project management software, we should be looking at how other business methodologies and strategic frameworks have been successfully productized and sold. Your true competitors aren't just software companies, they are authors, consultants, and educators who have packaged a way of thinking.
Exactly.
Consider these parallels. The business model canvas. This started as a concept in a book and is now a global standard. It's productized through workshops, certified trainers, books, and software tools like Strategizer that are built specifically around the canvas. They sell the methodology. SWOT analysis, a classic framework that is simple on the surface. Companies have built software, as my search shows. There are many SWOT analysis SaaS tools that guide users through the process, help them collaborate, and save their analyses over time. Personality, work style assessments, e.g., Myers-Briggs, DISC. These are methodologies for understanding people and teams. They are monetized through certifications, workshops, individual reports, and consulting. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, by Patrick Lencioni. This started as a book and has been spun out into a massive consulting and workshop ecosystem. The value is in applying the book's framework. The pattern here is that a powerful thinking model is introduced, often in a book, and then an ecosystem is built around it to help people apply it. Your 5 questions from Buckwoltz's work, which you are structuring into a SaaS tool, fit this pattern perfectly. This gives us a much more precise lens for our benchmarking. We're not just looking for feature software competitors. We are looking for anyone who has successfully packaged and sold a decision-making process. This is an excellent foundation. I have this context locked in. We're now perfectly set up for our session tomorrow, where we'll tackle the second of your 5 core questions.
Great. I gotta change the name of this video. All right, good. So I think that's good for right now. We'll see you in a little bit later.